Are you a beginner digital artist struggling to create your best work? Don't worry, I've got you covered with these 7 digital art hacks that will help with overcoming some of the hardest challenges in creating your work. So, I personally create using Clip Studio. However, you can do pretty much all of these things in most art programs, and that includes Fire Alpaca, a free art software that I already went over in another video. Okay, so hack number 1. Easy drop shadows. Sometimes when you're making a thumbnail or you're creating any kind of graphic, consider adding a drop shadow. The process may vary a little bit just depending on your art program, but the general process and idea behind it is the same. First thing you want to do is, well, create the thing that you want to create a drop shadow for. Usually, whenever you're doing something like this, it's probably going to be text, but it can really be used for pretty much anything that you want to pop a little bit. You want to basically duplicate this layer. So whatever program you're using, just go ahead, duplicate the layer. So now you have 2 layers, as you can see over here. So the layer on bottom, you're gonna want to add a clipping layer right above it and fill the clipping layer with black or whatever color you want the shadow to be. So basically I just create a new layer. I'm gonna turn it into a clipping layer. And now I want a black drop shadow, right? So I'm just gonna come over here and just fill this entire layer with black. Once you've done that, you're going to want to add a Gaussian blur filter over the bottom layer and then move it to wherever you want to see the shadow. So even in programs like Fire Alpaca, you'll have this option. In Clip Studio, you would basically just, rasterize this. Go up to Filter, right? Go to Blur, and then Gaussian Blur. So basically, if you want it to be more diffused, you're going to increase this number. So if I wanted it to be really blurry, I would use like that, right? But for the sake of this tutorial, we're not doing that. You could leave it at basically 0 and not even do a Gaussian blur if you wanted it to be a really sharp drop shadow. In this case, we're gonna do kind of like a, well, 10's a little high, like 8, right? And then from there, you can basically just move this around a little bit. And voila, you can move it down, you can move it up, and no matter where you put it, like a little drop shadow. Want it to pop just a little bit, you can just move it over to the side and down a little bit. And that usually works out pretty well. So basically, quick way to make your own custom shadow. Well, drop shadow. And then you can also, on top of that, play with the opacity. So if you want it to be kind of a softer shadow, you can turn down the opacity almost to nothing, or you can keep it kind of strong like that. Whatever it is that you want to do with it. Okay, so hack number 2 here is easy character shadows. So similar to the first trick that I showed you, you can very easily create a character shadow in almost the same way. My favorite way to do this is to basically merge all of the layers into a new layer and then duplicate it so as to preserve the original layers and basically follow almost the same process as the first method. But if you have a standing character, kind of like I'm showing you right here, I'm sure you're going to want to know how you can apply this as a shadow beneath them. So in this kind of scenario, I like to use the free transform function to position it in a way that looks right. It's maybe not the most accurate way to go about it, but in most cases, it's gonna pass. So if I were to redo this on this very piece that I did about a little bit less than a year ago, and this is just a fan art that I did on stream actually, on the spot of brittle rose hearts. So I'm gonna go ahead and hide this shadow so I can show you exactly what I did. Because right here, you see, it looks really flat, you know? But you go in here after you have all of your like character layers like duplicated to like where you need, so that you have a singular layer. You can very easily just duplicate it, right? And so basically what you're going to do is, again, very similar to what I just explained. So I'm going to put, because, you know, I'm doing this for the video here. So once again, we add a layer, right? Turn that into a clipping layer. Go ahead and fill that layer. And now, when we do the filter, Gaussian blur, I'm going to say is 6, right? Already you can start to see like the shadow forming around it. But obviously, if you just, you know, do this number, it's not going to fly. You know, if you're trying to make it look more like a shadow on the ground. So what you're going to do here instead is you're basically going to just retransform it. And so from here, it basically just turns into a process of how can I make this actually look like shadow? And as you start doing this, you're going to find that, you know, you need to move it up a little maybe. And already that's starting to look quite a bit, you know, like a regular shadow. Kind of bring it down till it looks about right. Again, you don't need to be perfect with this unless you're trying to actually impress any artists. And then if you feel like it's still not blurry enough, again, you can add more Gaussian blur to it. And that would be about, I think, 12, right? And then from here, you could change the opacity. Make it whatever you want. You can make it a little bit dimmer, or and do something else. You can also, instead of having black, make the shadow kind of complement your character. You could literally come in here like this, and just do that, and maybe even turn this to a darker. So then, if I do kind of like, oh, not that. If I do kind of like this, it can be more reddish and dark, match the character, or make it a little bit dimmer. So really, this is all about experimentation and what you want to do. Okay, so hack number 3 is super handy. This is using your magic wand. Now, unlike using a fill bucket alone, you can often change if you are like only trying to select a specific area in relation to other layers, or you can choose to just make it select the current layer. Now you might wonder why this is important, and I will show you in just a few clicks. So if you take your magic wand, and on a separate layer obviously from everything else, pretend that this is not actually fully colored here. I'm just using this as an example so you can get kind of a visual here. I'm also going to go ahead and get kind of a bright green color to help prove my point here. Let's say, you know, I want to create kind of like a shadow layer, kind of like what we already talked about. And, you know, it kind of backs up any like random uncolored pixels from using a fill bucket, you know, underneath the character. And you can also, like I said, use it kind of like a character shadow if you wanted to do that. I did that here, down here. And as you can see, same thing. So the way that this works is, for example, here I have this for other layers to select. So it knows not to select anything that is like separate from an open area. So if I do this, all of a sudden you notice it basically puts all this outline around here. If I were to hit the fill bucket, well, it does that. But what if we wanted to just color the character area? Well, what you would do instead is you would actually invert it, which would be right here. So when you do this, what you're going to end up doing is you're going to end up only coloring this. Now, how cool is that? If you want to go a step further, and some people do this, I don't really have a whole lot of success with this, but a lot of people say that you should, is to expand your selected area by 1. and then do it. I could see in this case it definitely would be helpful because there's still the outline there. But I think you catch my drift here. You could do this to basically create a layer that effectively just only colors the areas that you want to. It's really super helpful. I use the magic wand all the time. Very, very helpful. Do not forego using it. You will regret it. I didn't use it for the first part of my time being an artist, and it took me forever to color pictures, I'll be honest. Okay, so hack number 4. Multiply layers. Oh my gosh. So this trick is something I really wish I knew for literally years. And I didn't know. And I only actually found out about it like half a year ago. And it's because like layer modes really confused me. So I just used clipping layers a lot and like a variation of the color or using like black to create shadows. But I promise you will find it far easier and it will look so much better if you just use the multiply blend mode. Basically what it does is it increases or decreases the color based on value. At least that's the best way I can explain it. So what I'm going to go ahead and do here is I'm actually going to show you like a breakdown of this picture that I drew for my fire alpaca video. So you'll notice here over in my layers, I got a ton of clipping layers and stuff, but you'll notice all these multiply layers, right? If I were to go into, say, like, for example, the orange, you see how beautiful that shadow is? Like, how it, like, melds so perfectly? And the skin tone melds perfectly. And the hair is, like, perfect. The way you do that is through multiply layers. So how do you do that? Well, it's easy. You can basically use black, you can use white, whatever you want to do, but basically you select the mode, right? If I were to have this on normal, it just kind of, it doesn't do anything because I basically just used the same color of her shirt. If I made this not a clipping layer, right? And I hid that, you would see, oh, it's just, a 70% opacity of the same exact color that I used on her shirt. So when you turn this into a clipping layer and then turn that into multiply, all of a sudden you have that. Now I had it at 70 because 100's a little bit much, but you can see the difference, right? And the same thing goes for like her hair here. You'll see this. I literally use the same exact color. You can keep it really high like that if you want it to be like a darker kind of shadow. And again, I literally use the same exact color of her hair to do this. So you're not like pushing yourself like out into like a really weird color that doesn't quite make sense. If you catch my drift. Yeah, multiply layers. Use them. Okay, so I have to tell you guys about this. My 5th hack here is to download brushes. This also includes other assets. This hack is less of a hack and more just like a super useful tool. Regardless which art program that you use, you can usually download brushes from somewhere. Fire Alpaca, for example, has a built-in quote-unquote store that you can basically use to download brushes that were actually made by the developers for you for free. It's amazing. In Clip Studio, as you can see here on my screen, they have an actual like asset store where you can find paid and free items made by hundreds, if not thousands, of users just like you. So you can basically just download them and have some really useful brushes out of it. I have quite a few hairbrushes that are pretty effective. Like, for example, if I go through the Clip Studio store here, if I were to just scroll through, like, the front page, you're going to see all different kinds of stuff, right? And there's even like categories and stuff. So like if you're more like me, where you're like more comic and manga oriented, should load here in a moment. Yep. You'll see, oh my gosh, all these different things. You get like tree materials. You can get different kinds of pens. You can get brushes that look kind of like water. You can get different like speech bubbles and stuff. It's like really fantastic. They even have curly hair pens. I mean, just look at this. And more so, let me go ahead and flip back over to Flip Studio, like the actual paint application here, just so I could kind of show you what I mean. Let me just, doop, here we are. Let me actually go back over here. And I were to, let me actually just make a brand new thing here, just so I could kind of demonstrate. If I come over here, since, if you open this up, you'll see all different kinds of stuff. You can add this right over here. If I wanted to have, like a zipper, even. let me just show you what I mean. Like a gray zipper, right? Brush a bit bigger. You can literally, like, look at that. If you want to do some snowflakes, granted that's gonna add in like the color I have over here, which is kind of gross. But to make tinsel, you can do all different kinds of things depending on what you want to do. Like, look at this. It's like magic. So download some brushes. Some of them are, more like items and stuff like that, but you'll actually find, ooh, this one. Like, it's literally a nice way that you could basically just paint and make your art better, easier. Just do it. And not just that, there's also some content creators actually who have their own brush sets that they have and use. And some of them are free, some of them are paid. You just gotta keep your eyes open and look around. Okay guys, so this next one, super, super important. If I didn't stress it already. Basically, this one is coloring your lines using a clipping layer. Again, we're back to the clipping layers. This just makes things so much easier. If you look over here to your left, you'll notice this really nice picture that I drew last year, right? And if you actually look in really close, you're gonna notice, these lines, they're not black, right? They're not gray, they're not black. They actually have a color to them, depending on what the object is and how the light is bouncing off of it. So what I'm saying is, when you actually go into your lines, let me find a line layer just to kind of, because I did so much on this picture. I did so much on this. It took me months to do this picture because it was so complicated. Let's just look over here at the Manu Forte lines up here, right? 14? Yeah. Basically, the way I did this is, if you look here, you're gonna notice, oh hey, when I originally drew this, I did different colors, right? If I actually turn on the clipping layer, you'll notice I actually colored in with gold to match the theme. The reason actually why I did different colors originally is because this was a commission, right? And so I had to put that kind of like symbol on that banner right there, like that curtain, whatever you want to call it. And so I basically made it different colors to make it stand out and make it easier for me. But then when I actually wanted to like finish it up, I actually went ahead and just colored it with like this gold color, and like a darker gold to kind of like match, right? So as you could see, this can completely transform a picture just by coloring your line. you can see the difference. Sometimes you'll miss a little bit and it'll be like a little bit darker, and that's okay, but it just kind of adds a little bit of character to your painting, or your digital drawings, whatever you want to call them. Okay, so this last hack number 7, the one you've been waiting for this whole time, transparent pixel locking. Now, I know maybe not every art software will have this feature, but it's kind of important for a few reasons. For one, if you are absolutely done with a layer, it can prevent you from one of the worst things that could possibly happen, which is accidentally coloring on it. And that happens so often. And then you end up drawing or coloring like a piece that was meant to be on another layer, and then when you go back to fix it, you realize, oh, mistakes were made. So, conversely, you can also use it to basically limit the area that you can color in, so that once you've put down your color or your lines, whatever it is that you want to basically recolor, then, or like change or like paint, detail, whatever it is, you can basically use this as like a last step to your layer to make sure that, it looks the way you want to. It's similar to using a clipping layer, except it basically permanently changes the layer that you're working on, versus a clipping layer, which temporarily, or, I wouldn't say even temporarily, but it's something you can very easily remove and very easily revert. In this case, it would be not so easy to revert it, especially if you already had the lines another color. Like if you look here on this particular piece, you'll notice, zoom in to make it a little bit easier, see, I actually had colored all the lines with this brown color, right? To kind of make it a little bit more cohesive, a little bit more hand-drawn feeling. I even colored outside the lines a little bit just to push that, right? Let's say I wanted to change this and I wanted the lines to be the actual color like of the thing that I'm, painting. I could very easily go into the lines if there was where is the actual lines? Okay, there it is. If I actually oh, you know what? I realized I actually did those lines in that color. But if you come up here, this one, originally I had the lines that brown color, but this was kind of blue and I wanted it to kind of glow. So I had changed this to more of like that turquoise color. But alternatively, you could actually come in here and okay, that locks the layer, and that's the transparent pixel. So for this, I'd actually have to go rasterize, and then I can lock the transparent pixels, and if I wanted to, let's say, I'm going to use this green color just as an example. Now it's literally only coloring on this layer, just like a clipping layer. Thing is, this is more permanent. I would have to actually go back to fix this if I did not have a clipping layer to fix it. So I think that kind of maybe helps better explain, just showing you right here. So there may be a few extra steps involved if you use this particular tool, this thing, to recolor your lines, if you decide you later want to change that. If these tips helped you at all, I would love it if you could give this video a like to help the YouTube algorithm reach more people like you. Now, there are a lot of places that you can post your art, and everyone has different needs. So if you want some insight into some of the art platforms that are out there and don't know where to start, check out my video on some of the art platforms that are available right now.